Everybody, this is my 16th lecture series, and today I'll be delivering a session on the contract law. So, what do you mean by contract? We need to all understand that what is the definition of contract. Why I have taken up this topic? This topic is very relevant today for any kind of business or any kind of venture or any kind of relationship. We have to enter into a contract. So before knowing this term contract law, this is very important for us in order to understand what is a contract. What does the contract means into a day-to-day life, and how we will enter into a contract by interpreting or analyzing the law that you have got. You don't have to go to the books. You don't have to study the Indian Contract Act. It is not meant for any kind of academicians or the law students. It is these kind of sessions is applicable to each and everybody, especially if the law students or the law academicians or the any other professionals who are dealing with contracts, all the business person, they will also get advantage from this situation, from this session. So this is very important to understand that what do you mean by contract. Now, what is a contract? A contract is an agreement. Now, what is an agreement? Agreement is, obviously, we all know that we enter into an agreement with two or more parties or two or more individuals. It can be with a company also. For example, if you got an aquaguard in your house, or if you got a Xerox machine or a photocopier machine in your office, so that you have to enter into a AMC, annual maintenance contract. We all know AMC what is. So it is also a contract. So you have to abide by the rules and the regulations which is in the contract. So when you are signing that contract paper or you are signing that agreement paper, so it is called an agreement. So when you are signing that contract paper or you are signing that agreement paper, then you have to understand the terms and the condition which has been cited in the contract. So what is a contract? A contract, before going into the contract law, this will be the first series of the contract law, and it will go on for a little bit of a series in this week also. So I'll continue with some of the basic fundamentals of contract. So what is a contract? A contract is an agreement actually that specifically being, it's certainly legally enforceable, the rights and the obligation pertaining to two or more parties. So what is legally enforceable, you will ask? Legally enforceable is something which can be enforced in the court of law. So it becomes a contract law. Until and unless the law, it is not made into law, that contract between two or more individuals or two or more parties cannot be legally enforceable in the court of law. And understanding the rights and obligations between the parties. So what is the contract? A contract actually typically involves a consent. This is a very important area that we need to understand. But by forcibly you cannot enter into a contract. It means that at the gunpoint you cannot enter into a contract. There should be a consent between two parties, two or more parties. So the consent is very important. Now, what is that? In order to transfer the goods and services, money or promise or transfer, any one of those at a future date. For example, AMC. So what is AMC? Something in the entire year you are taking the AMC, annual maintenance contract, for repair of your television, for your washing machine, for your aquaguard in your home, for your photocopier machine, for your air conditioner, for fire extinguisher in your office. So this is a contract, and these services will be delivered at a future date. So you are entering a contract now, so that this is the rights and obligation which is being trusted upon the two parties. For example, X Limited is having a contract with me regarding maintenance of the aquaguard in my residence. So we two parties are entering into a contract at a future date, at a promise that we are making a promise. It is a promise that you are going to give a service to my residence for the maintenance of my aquaguard, and I've got a promise to pay you in the form of consideration. So this is the activity. So this is called the activity. Now, when the activities and the intention of the parties are entering into a contract, it may be referred to as contracting. It means you are contracting into a kind of activities or services that you are entering in. Now, in the event of the breach of contract. So what is a breach of contract? Breach of contract is something that you are not obeying the rights and the obligation which has been mentioned in the agreement of the contract. So if, for example, you have entered into a AMC with an aquaguard company X Limited. Now you are coming out of that contract, and you have not paid anything. So it is a breach of contract. So you have to pay the amount which has been serviced to you. and it is an obligation for your end. The rights belongs to the company X Limited. He or she, the X Limited will ask as an entity from you, sir, I have given the service to you, now you have to pay that the money. Otherwise, you have entered into a breach of contract. For example, if you are making a breach of contract, they are mentioned in the terms and condition. If the contract is, for example, for 5,000 rupees, and they are going to come monthly in your home. For example, you have made 2 services or 3 services, 3-month services you have taken. So remaining it will be 9 months. So for the remaining 9 months, the proportionate amount will be your penalty amount, as also, and the penalty will be also be mentioned in the terms and condition. The penalty will be imposed on you, and you have to pay the penalty. Otherwise, they will go into the court of law and they will start suing you in the court of law. So this is very important to understand, that whether the contract that you are entering into in the daily business, the daily activities or course of life that you are doing every day is very important to understand. Now, what is the breach of contract happens? If there is any breach of contract happens, then the injured party will go for what? They will go for the injured party. Injured party means affected party. Extremity is affected. Now, what will do? The entity will go to for judicial remedies. For example, it is called damages or equitable damages in the legal term. Our legal student, our legal fraternity, legal profession know the term called liquidated damage, or it is called equitable damage, or it's called damages. For what? For such a specific performance or rescission, means cancellation of the contract. Now, a binding agreement between the actors in international law is also known as treaty. For example, if 2 countries are coming into a relationship in the form of international treaty, they are not abiding by the rules of the law, then obviously there is a breakage of international law. So this is also a contract. So contract happens every day in every sphere of life. The countries are entering into contract, individuals are entering into contract, businesses are entering into a contract. You are entering into, for example, you are taking an admission into a course. It is also a contract, because you are paying something and you are getting the obligation, you are getting the services from the courses. So contract law is the field of the law of obligation concerned with the contracts. Means obligations are there with the contracts. The contracts that you are entering, the obligation is also there. So it is vice versa. They are brothers and sisters. Now, what is that? It is based on the principles of agreement must be honored. The agreement, the terms and conditions, the agreement must be honored. Like any other areas of private law, the private law, I will explain a little bit afterwards in some of the series of the contract law. What is a private law? The private law, the contract actually law between the varies of the jurisdictions. Now, in general, the contract law is exercised and governed under the common law, under the jurisdiction, or civil law jurisdictions, mixed law jurisdiction. It can be a common law, it can be a civil law. Actually, that combines both the elements of the common and the civil law. So, common law jurisdictions typically that requires the considerations in order to be valid. So what is the consideration? I've just mentioned that I have to pay this amount of money. So this is a consideration. Obligation is what? The obligation is that I have to pay that amount of money. What are the obligation of the company? Obligation of the company is to maintain my aquaguard. This is an obligation. So whereas it is civil, most of the mixed law jurisdictions solely require the meeting of minds. I've just mentioned consent. There should be meeting of minds. For example, the company X Limited cannot ask at the gunpoint that you must go into a contract with me with 5,000 rupees. Otherwise, I will not get into contract. And you must. This is not possible. There should be a meeting of minds. There should be a consent between each other, between the parties. So I am ending with this. This is the basic fundamentals. Go through this lecture also at once, twice or thrice. You will be able to understand that what is the rights, what is the obligation, what is the consent, what is the consideration for a contract. Then I will enter into the deeper concept of the contract, like what is the offer, what do you mean by capacity to enter into contract, what do you mean by acceptance, what is the meeting of minds, what is the consideration, what is the abstraction principle, what is the farm offer, what is the implication in fact, and what is the collateral contract, and what are the damages. So I think that you have enjoyed this session very much. Thank you for joining.